Good day, and welcome to the SNN.Network Summer Virtual Event. Our next presenting company is Victory Square Technologies. It is now my pleasure to turn the floor over to your host, Shaisan Tejani, CEO of Victory Square Technologies. Shaisan Tejani, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much for giving us the opportunity to present today, and thank you everyone for tuning in. So, Victory Square Technologies, ticker VST in Canada, VSQTF in the US, and 6F6 in Germany, was created in 2017. Our mission was to democratize access to the next best tech companies from around the world. So we give investors ground floor access to a diverse portfolio of over 20 game-changing entrepreneurs and companies globally in sectors such as digital health, gaming, esports, crypto, augmented and virtual reality, the creator economy, cybersecurity, and green tech. So before we get into the presentation, I'll just give a quick background on myself, which I think will tie into some of the foundational principles of Victory Square. So I started in the online dating space in the mid-90s out of my dorm room at university. At the time, I was one of those young kids that saw how the internet was going to disrupt the way we accessed information, the way we worked, played, and communicated. And we set up an online dating site. We became very good at driving traffic and conversions. And at that time, I don't know if anyone can remember back to the dot-com boom, but there were all these crazy ideas just adding .com onto them that were making no money. In our case, the business was cash flowing, and the dating space was one of the few businesses that not only was cash flowing at that time, but was very easy to expand globally because dating was dating as a concept in most countries that you go to. So we launched the service globally, and then we started to buy, build, or invest in businesses that either solved the pain point in our existing business or that we could drive users to. Today, we refer to that as a venture build model. So in the case of Victory Square, we buy, build, and invest in businesses that either solve a pain point within our existing ecosystem that we have a client for, or an area or subject that we have a competitive advantage or an unfair advantage in. Since the mid-90s, we've been very fortunate to be in the water for a successive number of waves. From Internet 1.0 or Web 1.0 to the mobile revolution, Web 2.0, and today, which we see as a big opportunity in Web 3.0. For us, extraordinary performance comes from seeing things that other people can't see, and those are the types of entrepreneurs that we look for. A couple of high-level highlights, kind of on Victory Square before we, dive into more specific details. I mentioned earlier we've got over 20 portfolio companies, so investors are not getting a one-trick pony. They're getting a lot of depth and diversity. From a financial perspective, we've had 5 consecutive quarters of positive net income and earnings per share. Our last audited financials came out in April, and they're for fiscal 2020. We posted net income of $16.3 million and positive earnings per share of 30 cents. Currently have a very healthy balance sheet. We've got about $7.5 million of cash and cash equivalents on the balance sheet. So again, well financed. And we actually, as a small cap company, issued a dividend earlier this year, and we'll be issuing another dividend later on this month. So very healthy balance sheet, diverse portfolio for investors, and we think that these are some key KPIs that investors should keep an eye out for. When looking at kind of the company at a glance and under the hood, you can see that from 2017 when we started to this year, our portfolio has grown from 3 companies to 26. So every year we have the capacity to onboard, anywhere from 3 to 5 new projects into our ecosystem. You can also see the NAV growth, from 4 million in 2017 to 110 million plus today. So there's significant growth year over year on that. All of these companies, they haven't come from one geographic region. We have relationships with about 80 incubators and accelerators around the world, and we've evaluated over 600 companies, globally to pick these 26 areas that we focused on. And then from an investment perspective, we've invested about $13 million into this portfolio. So you're seeing, just based on our NAV, that we've done a great job as allocators of capital. And the majority of that capital has come from management. So myself, I'm the largest investor. The management team and our partners have invested, over 10 million of our own dollars into, validating this thesis. So there's an alignment with management, in Victory Square. When you think about, kind of the thesis or what the big idea is, I mentioned I started in the .com era, and I was one of those kids again at the time that saw, people always need to eat, work, play, and connect. What changes is how they do that and how companies deliver those services to customers. And so back then, there were all these young entrepreneurs or young people that were seeing, the system differently. They were solving pain points or rethinking the customer experience using the technology, at the time. And today, we see that there are 5 innovation platforms that are really propelling tremendous innovation and ideas and new businesses by entrepreneurs globally. And these 5 multi-trillion-dollar innovation platforms are all converging at once. So AI, DNA sequencing, robotics, blockchain, energy storage. Each of these platforms is, creating breakthroughs and opportunities. And we're seeing how entrepreneurs are leveraging these new technologies and ushering a new breed, of companies that are basically being seeded, around the world, leveraging these technologies to reimagine, every industry as we know it. And if we had to refer back, just thinking about the invention of the steam engine and what it did to propel the Industrial Revolution and electricity after that, and computing and the internet, how it changed our ecosystem. And ultimately, again, it boils down to the fact that people still want to eat, work, play, connect. What changes is just how that is delivered, how they do that, and how it's delivered to them. This next slide is a bit dramatic, but the one thing that I think resonates is, if I go back and flash back to 1996 and 1997 and think to myself, like, would I actually have believed that an upstart like Amazon or Netflix would, or Google for that matter, would take out Blockbuster and Yellow Pages and Sears? And I don't think anyone would have made that bet, but we've seen how that story unfolds, and I think this is happening again. We've seen it recently with companies like Coinbase and Uber and Airbnb, but I think that this disruption is only going to continue. So at Victory Square, we're looking for these needles in a haystack, these gems globally, from these bright minds that are digital first. I didn't grow up on the internet or with personalized computers. These are things that I started to tinker with in my mid-teens. But today's youth and generation, know no different. And so the tools that they have access to and the way they think, is significant. And these are the types of, this is the big opportunity. And for us, it's finding these individuals and backing them. Our portfolio, is wide and there's tremendous diversity. This kind of shows a highlight of the growth from a year-over-year basis, but also the diversity in sector, from digital health to solar to Web3 to the creator economy, to SD-WAN to sports betting, virtual and augmented reality, AI. So there's tremendous depth that investors are getting access to. You'll see these broken into 2 colors, white and gold. The ones in white are the companies we almost refer to as select. So these are the ones that are really kind of hitting their stride, and we're spending more time on them in that there's a tremendous opportunity for Victory Square to to monetize these assets, either from a cash flow perspective, an exit perspective, or spinning off as their own entity, which our shareholders can look out for share dividends in these companies as they get spun out, or being able to unlock value on our own balance sheet once these companies go out. To highlight a couple of examples of some of these select companies that are really kind of hitting their stride. There are a couple here on this slide. I'll start with Fans Unite. So Fans Unite was one of the first companies in our portfolio. We initially acquired the business in and around 2017 for approximately $2 million. They went public we took them public last year, I think in May. They listed at a $25 million market cap. And today, the market cap is probably around $180 million. They hit a high earlier this year of $300 million. They've raised over $50 million, conducted two, strategic M&A transactions. But this really kind of kicked off this inflection point that we had in our business model last year, and that from the time a company comes in our portfolio, it takes about 12 to 48 months. And so they were the first almost, we call, company to hatch and spin off and really kind of validate our business model. On the top, there's Game On, which was another company which, again, came into our portfolio. I think our initial investment in that was around $1 million. They're listed right now. They listed in June of this year. They were spun out. I think the market caps are around $20 million, and they're just kind of hitting their stride. We actually issued a share dividend. So when they got spun out, if you were a shareholder of VST, you were eligible for shares in Game On that were kind of when it was spun out, that we issued to all VST shareholders. And then Immersive Tech, which is our VR and AR company. This is interesting because this was built in-house from scratch. So we didn't go out. This was an idea and concept we came in built in-house. The company's been around for a couple of years. Huge clients like Snickers, the NHL, Scotiabank, Intel, Capital One. Amazing board, IP team. We just did a financing with these guys we financed at a $23 million pre-money valuation, and they've been approved to be listed. So they'll be listed in the next couple of weeks as their own public entity. We've announced issuing a share dividend to VST shareholders. So we're issuing a significant dividend to our shareholders. So if you're a VST shareholder on record at the end of this week, you'll get shares in Immersive, and then we'll issue another tranche of shares in Immersive at the end of the year to VST shareholders. So this is a really key element in that there are a couple of key points here. One, last year was an inflection point for us where the flywheel is in effect. Fans Unite came out, now Game On, Immersive next, and then Stardust in November, where investors can look forward to a couple of things. One, the opportunity of getting a share dividend in these companies, and then seeing VST's balance sheet increase, because as these companies get spun out, they unlock value in our balance sheet. So Immersive Tech, for example, because it was incubated from scratch, doesn't show up in our book value. But we know, given that it was financed at this valuation at $23 million pre-money, that gain is going to pop up on our balance sheet once we go below 20%. So these are things that investors can look out as catalysts. And then you've got a couple underneath, like Hydrate, which is a company we acquired earlier this year, wholly owned. It's one of our anchors in the digital health space in the U.S. and in Brazil, where there's telehealth services, both from our own branded product to white labeling services from telehealth platforms, pharmacy. We've got a 503B pharmacy license in the U.S., PC compliance that we are white labeling to other entities that want to be able to offer these services to their patients or their network of clinics. So there are a number of really, really good IP assets within Hydrate. Covalent, super exciting. The company's CQT token market cap became a unicorn over the weekend. So they crossed the $1 billion mark. They actually, I think, played around with hitting the $2 billion mark over the weekend, but it's come down a bit. So again, exceptional team in the blockchain space, a data infrastructure project, exceptional things coming out of that. Copilot AI, I think the team, it's been in our portfolio since 2018. I think our ownership stake's around 23%. I think their ARR, they're going to end the year at around 25 million ARR. So again, exceptional companies. These are all companies that have kind of been in the portfolio that are hitting their stride. And then there's some new areas of focus, from the NFT space with Next Decentrum, which has been a thought leader in that space. The creator economy with Creator.co, which is new to our portfolio, which is going to become a big focus. And Stardust Solar, which is really, one of kicking off our kind of exposure to this, green tech renewable space. So those are just some examples of companies that, I think investors can expect to hear more about as we're, really focusing on. Now, our secret sauce, what is our competitive advantage? How do we find these needles in a haystack? Well, we use a magnet, and it's this venture build model. So, first thing to note is we are not passive investors. We act as co-founders in the companies that we work on. So everything starts with us identifying a pain point. So do we have a client or a pain point within our existing business ecosystem? Or is there an area that we want to be involved in that we see a massive opportunity? So that's how we start before we even look out for anything. Then we go and find a solution. And for us, we have a huge advantage in that the tech is borderless, and we can access, 80 accelerators around the world. So we're tapping into bright minds globally to find companies that are solving pain points. And this is huge for us in that, not only the access we have, given that we've built up these relationships over 2 decades, but our entry point into some of these transactions is significantly lower than what investors would see in the U.S. And then 2, there's this, when you're investing early, so much of your bet is on the jockeys, on the founding team. And so you're finding these founders that have this grit and persistence and this such a strong conviction to why. Great, allocators of capital, but a get rich or die trying attitude. And these are entrepreneurs that we want to back. These are guys and girls that have, are relentless and persistent. So we're able to find these. And then again, we bring them into our ecosystem and incubate and scale and grow them, over 12 to 48 months. And we're able to, incubate them in market. So because we knew we had a pain point or a client, we're able to really help these entrepreneurs, hit their product market fit quick. And then this monetization strategy, which is what we started seeing last year. And again, this starts at the 36, 48 month mark. So Fans Unite, we spun off, it unlocked tremendous value for us. We're able to, create liquidity for ourselves to reinvest in the funnel. So create liquidity at a significant, gain to our cost base, reinvest in the funnel. And then in addition to that, we can also issue a share dividend like we did in Game On, or in the case of Immersive, it unlocks value on our balance sheet where, currently doesn't show up. So investors can be a part of getting a share dividend, seeing this unlock value in our balance sheet. And then ultimately, again, this allows us to not only reinvest in the funnel to keep bringing in future value, but we also hold stakes in a lot of these companies because we believe that they're going to be, game changers and potential, unicorn companies on their own. And again, taking Fans United as an example, outstanding board, management team, product, they're cashed up, huge sector, and we think that there's still a tremendous amount of value that can be unlocked in that company. Before kind of talking about team, I just want to summarize that there are specific areas we focus on. So next generation internet, digital health, climate, and the creator economy. Everything, all of our portfolio companies, whether they're in the AI sector, gaming, blockchain, crypto, they all kind of fall under those 4 large categories, which is where we're digging deeper. At Victory Square, again, we believe that building a company is the ultimate team sport. We've assembled a team of some of the smartest people and partners in a wide variety of spaces globally. So these aren't just British Columbia where we're based, or Canadian, or North American. These are some of the brightest minds globally that are part of our team. And we believe that this is one of the huge advantages that we have as a parent company and that our portfolio companies have, in that we cross-pollinate best practices, customers, talent, IP. So, it gives our entire ecosystem a greater chance of success and our companies a greater chance of success, and that they can tap into all the resources kind of within our ecosystem. And then just looking from a partnerships perspective, whether it's the Canadian Gaming Association, BC Diabetes, the Waterloo Institute for Machine Learning and AI, there are all these great partnerships that we have that our companies can tap into. And our team has, 25 plus years in different variety of areas, from user acquisition to processes to, the accounting and M&A space. Myself, I mentioned, started the dot-com boom in the mid-90s and have been fortunate to have, successive, tremendous success over the last, 25 years in the tech, the tech space. Warren Buffett says it's not enough to invest in a good company. It's your entry point. And I think, looking at our cap table, there's some key indicators for why, Victory Square is a great, I think a great company to be on the radar for investors. We've got about 96 million shares out. Current stock price is about 42 cents. Market cap, I think as of yesterday, was around $40 million. Strong inside ownership. I mentioned earlier, we've got skin in the game. We're aligned. We're long-term on this. And again, healthy balance sheet. There's no, we're not in a cash crunch. There's no concerns of dilution. Very healthy balance sheet. So cash and cash equivalents around $7.5 million that we have. Ultimately, I think investors are tuning in to this conference and to other conferences or playing the market, primarily because they want to make money. And there are a number of highlights for Victory Square. One is, I think, again, for me as an investor, I always want to find things that other people don't. And so I think Victory Square, when you dive into the story, I think you're going to see a lot of key highlights and KPIs that really show that we're undervalued, from our NAV of $110 million to our allocators of capital, seeing the ROI on the $13 million invested, the growth year over year since 2017, the fact that we've got depth in all of these different areas. I think our PE ratio is around two right now, where tech companies generally trade at 13 to 15. So there's a number of very, very key strong KPIs that I think investors should dig into. But there are also some short-term catalysts that I think are coming due. I mentioned Immersive Tech. So Immersive Tech is the next company that's being spun out. It should be public in the next couple of weeks. We'll be issuing a share dividend in 2 tranches. So if you're a Victory Square shareholder on record at the end of this week, you'll get shares in Immersive. So that's a big boon. And then if you're a shareholder on record at the end of, I think, December, we don't have an exact date, you'll also get another tranche there. So, some big catalysts kind of on deck. Our Q2 of this year ended at the end of June, and the numbers come out at the end of this month. So again, we believe that, we're going to go from 5 consecutive quarters of positive net income and earnings per share to 6. We have another company that we're preparing to list, which is Stardust Solar. And then there's traction in some of the existing portfolios. So Hydrate, which is our digital health company, signed a really strategic partnership with a large U.S. company called Medline to offer its services to all of Medline's, clients. So this is a significant opportunity for Hydrate. So they were already on track for $5 million in sales, and we're expecting that to be even more significant with the traction they're getting. We recently announced a follow-on investment in one of our portfolio companies, Creator.co. So I think investors can anticipate a lot more news, in that sector and space, as it's going to be a big focus for us. And then there's some new companies that investors can keep an eye out for in the digital assets management space, and in the fintech space around the rent now, pay later. So we always have, portfolio companies incubating, under the hood that can pop out at any given time. I mentioned Covalent earlier, which just over the weekend hit CQT token market cap, jumped over $1 billion and unexpectedly. So one of the great things here is there's always, tremendous catalysts, around the corner. That kind of summarizes the presentation. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. I'll go to the Q&A now. I think apparently we get cut off at a certain point. So if we do, I just want to highlight, if there are any questions that we don't get to, investors, please feel free to email us at ir@victorysquare.com with those questions, and we'll get back to you promptly. Or if you want to dive into deeper, get on our mailing list. We issued a corporate update for the last 8 weeks, which went out on Tuesday. So there's a ton of news and a strong digital footprint that we can let investors know about. So I'm gonna go to the Q&A section right now. So first question. What is an external catalyst, if it happens, that could result in an inflection point event for Victory Square? Great question. So I mentioned a couple of them in there. I think one is the spinoff of a portfolio company, which Immersive is being spun off, which currently doesn't show up on our books because it's a wholly owned sub, or close to a wholly owned sub. When it gets released, it will unlock value on our balance sheet, and that is something that I think investors will can look forward to, because it, whether it's Q2 or Q3 or Q4 when it shows up, there'll be a significant net income gain there. The other is the share dividend. So I mentioned this, if you're a VST shareholder on record at the end of this week, you'll get a dividend, a common share dividend in Immersive. So and this is not an anomaly. It'll be a pattern every time a company gets spun off, and I think for probably the next 4 to 6 quarters, that's going to be the case. So investors can keep an eye out for this. So next question, can you repeat the market cap for Covalent, please? Also, what is the market cap of Copilot now roughly? Many thanks. So Covalent's CQT market cap crossed $1 billion US over the weekend, and they actually touched upon around $2 billion. I think it's come down a bit. So I can post, what we'll do is we'll post on our social a link to be able to track and monitor that. And it sparked a number of other projects. So Covalent's business model is a data infrastructure project that's chain agnostic. And without getting too technical, there are tremendous opportunities that are opening up for that VST Covalent are working on together, that our shareholders can keep an eye out for around the digital asset management side, which I kind of touched upon earlier as a project that's being incubated right now. Copilot. So Copilot was a portfolio company. We invested in them in 2018. The market cap and valuation when we invested in them was around 4 million Canadian pre-money, and we have about a 23% stake. There've been talks and estimates that they're gonna go public next year at a market cap anywhere between 150 to 300 million dollars Canadian. They're tracking to end this year with 25 million in ARR. So just to put this in context, when we came into Copilot, I think they were doing maybe 30,000 ARR. And they've been growing by leaps and bounds, and it's an exceptional company. We don't talk much about it, but again, this is an example of companies kind of within our portfolio. Time for one, I think, last question before we get cut off. Do the U.S. shares receive the same share dividends as in Canada? Any special issues in the U.S.? So all of our investors will receive the same share dividends. The special issues for U.S., I don't know them specifically. Please reach out to our IR team, so ir@victorysquare.com for specifics. But I think in the U.S., there's a time delay. I think that's the biggest issue. There's a time delay depending on where your U.S. shares are housed, which brokerage house they're housed at. So the treatment will be the same for all our shareholders, Canadian, U.S., Europe. But I think that there's the special issue is, I think, a timing issue, which is, I think, specific to where your shares are being held. So we just got a cue that we got to wrap up. So again, thank you everybody for tuning in. Really appreciate your time. If I didn't get to your question, please reach out to ir@victorysquare.com. Thank you everybody, and we're always excited. So.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude the SNN Victory Square Technologies presentation. Thank you for joining us. You may now disconnect.